Welcome to Currents Up Close. I'm Jeff Olson, your Public Safety Director and Police Chief for the City of Cedar Falls, and with me today is our Fire Chief, John Boswick, and our Assistant Police Chief, Craig Birdie. Today we're here to talk a little bit about the Public Safety Officer and the program we got going with in Cedar Falls. We have a cross-trained program going on between our police and firefighters that we've been doing for a considerable number of years. And we just want to talk to you a little bit today and explain a little bit about how this program works and some of the great benefits there are to the City of Cedar Falls. So, do you want to start, Craig, by explaining a little bit about the Public Safety Officer and kind of what the role is?
Sure. Well, our public safety officers are they're hired as public safety officers after our screening process and the hiring. They attend the Iowa Law Enforcement Academy. They complete the field training officer program, which is 4 months of training after attending the Law Enforcement Academy. Shortly after that time, they attend Firefighter 1 training put on by our own Cedar Falls Fire Department through the Iowa Fire Service Training Bureau. They undergo training put on by the Cedar Falls firemen on the fire skills, and then at that point they carry their fire gear with them in the squad cars while they're out on patrol.
And we also have some current employees that are trained to be public safety officers. But what we've got on the screen now is we're kind of showing you a little bit about that public safety officer, which would be the police officer operating the squad car. And you can see they carry their fire gear with them in the bag. And you'll see the compressed air foam system that they've shown at the big red tank, the gauges, and what you see them using there. We'll explain a little bit about how that works a little bit later. But we do have some current employees that are signed up for the program and are public safety officers as well, police and fire both. Can you tell us a little bit about that, John?
Yeah, we have, currently we have 12 public safety officers that are cross-trained to assist the fire department. And they go through monthly training. They've already been certified as Firefighter 1 through Fire Service Training Bureau. Then they go through monthly training with our firefighters and the fire officers, the exact same training that our firefighters would go through, including this month we had some extrication training with them. We do a variety of different experiences with them, such as live burns. We do air mask training with them, hose line training, and all those types of things. It actually creates a little bit more well-rounded employee.
We've had some cross-trained police officers and firefighters for a number of years. I became cross-trained as a firefighter. I started out on the police side with Cedar Falls 31 years ago and became cross-trained as a firefighter in 2005. And I know you've been cross-trained to the police reserve levels for how long?
Since about 2011, I've been cross-trained as a police officer, which means that I routinely, monthly, I ride with a police officer or I'm out on my own in a police car, managing the same types of police calls as the regular police officers do.
And Craig, you've been cross-trained since what time?
I went through cross-training as a firefighter in 2005, so I've been part of the paid on-call or PSO program since 2005. So since that time, I went to monthly fire training along with the skills that the career firemen are going through. And like I said, we've done that monthly I've done that for 12 years.
And we've, since 2005, we've had some variation of cross-training, but what we've started to do recently is we've had the public safety officers operating the squad cars with the gear in the car, where in the past you spent some time at the fire station, but you didn't carry your gear in your car with you. So we've made some changes to the program, and some significant changes which we think are working very well for us. In fact, I think we got a graphic up here that shows a kind of a traditional model that we've been operating in here in Cedar Falls for a while, and that shows the number of police officers and firefighters that we may traditionally have. Now these numbers could be more or less, but traditionally we had 5 police officers operating and 7 firefighters operating, not cross-trained and not necessarily helping each other out during the day. What this public safety officer allows us to do is, if you look at the graphic now, you'll see 2 police officers, 5 public safety officers, and 5 firefighters. The significance is the 5 in the middle they can do either number of things. They can be operating a squad car, and you could have 7 on patrol, and the 5 on the right would be the firefighters, or you could have any combination. All 5 could be on the fire side, or you could split them up, or however you want to do it during the day. And so what you'll notice is that that traditional model had 5 police officers and 7 firefighters. Now you have the potential to have 7 police officers and 10 firefighters based upon what your calls are occurring at the time. So it provides a lot of flexibility, and you can throw more people on one side or the other when needed. It's a great program. Let's talk a little bit about how we got to that process, or maybe what pushed us to go to the public safety model. John, I know you got some fire stats for us.
Well, in the what we've done is, instead of waiting for firefighters to arrive on scene from callback and that type of stuff, we've utilized that public safety officer. Part of the reason for that is fires have gone down in the past 40 years. Since I came on the fire department, we've decreased the number of actual working fires, what we call working fires. And according to NFPA statistics, they're down about 60% in the past 40 years. I've only been here 37 years, but that seems pretty accurate for my time in the fire service. In the last year, we had about 5 significant fires that caused us to have callback and to have additional firefighters. During those 5 fires, we actually had public safety officers responding to assist us on a lot of those fires.
And then police response, I think, Craig, you know, you're obviously real familiar with some of the police calls and the number of calls we have, and sometimes you have calls on hold and that kind of thing. In matter of fact, when we looked at 2016 statistics, the police responded about 8 times as many calls as fire did. So the ability to move people back and forth has really been a big advantage to us.
Yes. Well, like you said, recently for us, the police have responded to about 8 times as many calls for service as our fire department. The PSO program allows us to have, trained police officers who can also supplement the fire department and help them, but be out patrolling, doing police duties 24 hours a day, and still be able to help when there's a fire emergency. So it's been a big help for the police officers.
Yeah, it's kind of nice. Instead of having the number of firefighters standing by, if we can shift a few to work patrol, and if they're needed for a fire scene, they can go to a fire scene. Works very, very well. What we're talking today is about the Public Safety Officer Program for the City of Cedar Falls. Program we've been experimenting with for a number of years, since 2005. And we've gotten to a point where we think we've really refined it. We're doing some great things for Cedar Falls. We can provide more people on the police scene or the fire scene by having the same number of employees. It's a great program. Maybe we should talk a little bit about the training, get a little more in depth into the training that the public safety officers receive. Maybe particularly we can start a little bit about the fire training.
Yeah, so one of the things that we do once the police officer comes on board is, at a point in time we bring them in and we train them to the firefighter 1 level. That's according to NFPA standards, and it meets the Fire Service Training Bureau standards for the minimum training that they need. Gives them experience in hose lines, it gives them experience in working with an air mask, gives them experience working at a fire, a training fire. We do a lot of different skills. One of the things that we do with our people in Cedar Falls is we have a 40-page manual that we utilize, that the firefighters and the officers at the station, they train those public safety officers and check them off and ensure that they know those skills, so that they have some knowledge that the PSOs have information on how to put out a fire, how to respond to those types of incidents. It really has been a good program for us. We offer them the opportunity to also go to live fires over at the Waterloo Regional Training Center along with our firefighters. This year we're going to do some live burns at some flood buyout houses that we have in North Cedar. A couple of houses that we have our eye on. Will make great training opportunities for these public safety officers to give them experience in how to enter a building, how to manage their air mask that they'd be wearing, manage that time, how to manage a hose line, dragging it through a house, through around twists and turns. It's a great experience for them in a more, in a controlled environment, but also with that live fire going on.
And Craig, I think you actually attended, I think we have a video here now that's showing one of the live fire trainings we did. We had a house that we did a burn on. I think you were there for that, weren't you?
Well, I took place in this here. This was out west of town on First Street. And, you know, we did training, search training inside the house. There was obviously training dealing with the fire in the house and extinguishing the fire. We did training on the tanker truck and transporting water to the scene that was in a rural area. So this was an all-day training event. You know, one thing I recall too in my time as a PSO too, I've attended training at Kirkwood Community College at the annual fire training school. I've been to the hazmat facility in Waterloo and done training. I've attended the burn trailers here in Cedar Falls. So I've attended a lot of fire training events. So.
Yeah, that's good to know. And I think just this month we actually had Jaws of Life training, didn't we, for the whole fire department, the career individuals as well as the PSOs and all the alternative staff.
Right, we had, out at the local junkyard, we had several cars that firefighters, both alternative staff and career staff, both had the opportunity to practice what would happen if there was a car accident, what we call extrication, getting someone out of a car if they were trapped inside of that car. It's great training. It's an opportunity that we don't always get, but annually we try to refresh those skills. Just like every other skill that we have, we try to refresh those skills and have repetitive training.
Okay. Well, I think what we'll do now is we'll take a short break, and when we come back, we'll talk a little bit more about public safety in Cedar Falls.
People think I'm trash, but they're wrong. Today, I'm just an aluminum can, but one day, I could be a stadium.
Hi, may I please have an application? Thank you.
Skip the drama. Get your diploma.
Okay.
Take that first step towards a better future. Find free adult education classes at finishyourdiploma.org.
Open up your books to page 360.
Did you just look at your phone while you was in class? You played yourself.
Talking about inspirational quotes.
You gotta believe in yourself. Don't ever play yourself. The key is to make it, so make it.
Louise, can you give me an example of an inspirational quote?
Don't play yourself. The key is to make it.
And who said that?
I did. Now that's a major key alert.
Learn the real major keys to getting to college at getschool.com.
Welcome back to Currents Up Close. We're talking today about the public safety program in the city of Cedar Falls, and that's a cross-training efforts between the police and fire departments. With me today are Fire Chief John Boswick and Assistant Chief Craig Birdie. So we've talked a little bit about the public safety program, about how it operates, a little bit about training, the need for public safety, and I think maybe a couple things we didn't touch upon is that, or maybe it's just a little recap, is that we've got the same number of public safety employees as we've had in the past. We're just cross-training them so we can shift them one direction or another towards the police or towards the fire side if we need more people one way or another. So it helps keep our costs down, helps us keep the number of employees down instead of the traditional models where you need a few more police, you hire a few more police. If you need a few more firefighters, you hire a few more firefighters. And then you have a lot more employees. And some of these employees are standing by a considerable amount of the time. The fire industry, fires have dropped 60% in the last 4 years, so we're just trying to adapt to the changes that occurred in the police and fire industry. So maybe we should touch upon some of the research we did and some of the cities we visited and some information that we have that kind of pushed us along this way. I know we have a graphic here that has 130 different cities that have a public safety program where they have cross-trained police and fire. And this came from the Michigan State University and I think the Department of Justice. And I know it's a graphic you really can't read, but it just illustrates the number of cities that are doing it. In fact, just to the right of those cities are the population of those cities. And you have cities anywhere from less than 1,000 in population to over 200,000 in population. One city we recently visited was Woodbury, Minnesota. John, can you tell us a little bit about Woodbury?
Well, Woodbury is a suburb of the Minneapolis Twin Cities area, and they are total public safety. They manage their police and fire through, they have 2 fire people on duty, and then they have the rest are public safety officers that are cross-trained either fire and police or police and emergency medical. It gives them an opportunity to utilize those people where they really need them in the times that they really need them. Woodbury is a town of 70,000, I think it was, and they have a really robust program where they move those people around and have them doing a lot of different things as the day goes by. They have a real great model for managing their personnel as far as dispatching them and all that type of stuff too. It was a very educational experience.
Yeah, it was a really neat visit. We went up there a couple of different times and met with them and visited the police, the fire, the public safety model, learned a lot about how they operate and how efficient of a model that is. And I believe, no, we didn't visit in person, but we made a few phone calls to Bloomington, Minnesota. And I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about that city. They do something a little bit different than what we're doing, but it was good to talk to them and see what they're doing. But Craig, do you have a little information maybe to share on that?
Well, I know that Bloomington, Minnesota, where the Mall of America is a volunteer fire department. They're volunteers that get paid on call when there is a fire, and they have an extremely small full-time fire force. I couldn't tell you exactly what that number is, but it's 2 or 3 full-time employees there. So, and they take care of, obviously, the Mall of America's there, and Bloomington's a good-sized suburb of Minnesota, or in Minneapolis.
And then we're aware of many cities in Minnesota, Michigan, and California. Of course, John, you're from California, and you've brought a lot of information to us about cities in California that are public safety departments, and some of them go back to the 70s and I think even before, don't they?
Yeah, we've spoken with several of them. Grosse Pointe Shores in Michigan actually is the first one in the United States. 1911 is when they started doing public safety. We've talked to Sunnyvale, California, which has been doing it since 1950, and it's down in the heart of the Silicon Valley. They have over 200 public safety officers, and they protect over 200,000 people. It's a very robust program where those people move seamlessly between police and fire and police, depending on the emergency. So it's a great system there too. We also know of quite a few. We've obviously looked at the graphic of 130 communities, a lot of them in Michigan. And Michigan State did some great research on that that gave us some great information on it. But there's also in the state of Iowa, we've got the Eastern Iowa Airport and the Moline Airport as 2 good examples of cross-training.
I thought that was real interesting. You go to the Eastern Iowa Airport, which I think we've probably all been to, and you see a Cedar Rapids police officer in there. I never knew up until probably less than 2 years ago that they are also a cross-trained firefighter. In fact, there's no full-time fire staff on duty. They're all PSOs, and they all suit up in the Cedar Rapids Police and provide the security there. And if there's a fire, they switch to that fire role, which really, similar to what it's doing in Cedar Falls, saves them from having to have a full-time fire staff, standing by, waiting for the fires. It's really a great program. I think Michigan, we also made a phone call, I think it was to Kalamazoo, and they have a great program there at all. They're, as I recall, 100% cross-trained since, was that the 70s that they started, or?
I think it was, somewhere in the 70s, I believe it was.
They started that program. They're to a point now where every single employee, and I think they have over 200 public safety employees, every one of them are cross-trained police and fire.
Yeah, Kalamazoo touts themselves as the largest public safety department in the United States. They have the most employees, and they seamlessly move back and forth between police and fire depending on which which profession they actually need to be managing at that point in time. They have just a few in the stations, and then the rest of them are out on the street fighting crime, or responding to police calls, or responding to different incidents, and it seems to be a great program for them.
Well, we've, as we mentioned, we've been doing cross training since about 2005, but we really, earlier this year, started putting the gear in the car and having the police officers respond with the gear in the car. And we've got a few examples we'd like to share with you, a few fire examples in which we've had some increased number of staffing or individuals respond to those fire scenes. And I know this was a few years ago, and this was actually before we started putting the gear in the car, but we had individuals that were able to respond because they had their gear nearby. But that was at Viking Pump. It was called in as a fire, but it turned out, I believe we didn't have to extinguish anything. But I remember you were there, John, and you talked about that afterwards. Can you share a little bit about what happened there and what you observed?
Well, I think actually it was the very first fire that we had the police officers having their gear in their car. And we had 13 people respond total to that fire. And my comment on that was, we had, I think, 7 people that were on duty that day at the fire station, and then the other 6, maybe we might have had 7 additional police officers that showed up. And I had never seen, in my 37 years of fighting fires in the city of Cedar Falls, I'd never seen that many people first in on a fire, being there right away, able to manage that incident. Thankfully, it turned out to be nothing, but imagine the amount of work that could get done with 13 people, 14 people as opposed to 7.
I remember that day because you told me, you came up to me, and I just remember you saying, I've never had that many people on the scene immediately in your 30-some years as a career. It was really interesting. We had a garage fire recently, Craig, and I know you were at that scene where we had several PSOs. Can you talk a little bit about that one?
Oh, there was a garage fire here just within the last couple months, occurred at about 7 o'clock on a Saturday evening. And the on-duty fire crew responded with 7 firemen. We had 4 police officers respond to that, and or actually 4 PSOs responded, a total of 5 police officers, and 2 of them immediately suited up and helped with the fire. The other 2 PSOs weren't needed to help with the fire, but it just helped with the work that needed to be done at that fire. And so it was a significant help, and it worked out well.
Between the firefighters and the fire chief and the PSOs and such, I know we had 13 respond to that scene. Traditionally in the past, for the past 20 years, it would typically be 7 or 8. So these are some great examples that shows that we just got more people at that scene. And I know we got another example we wanted to share too, and that was that call to the University of Northern Iowa.
Right, it turned out to be a small incident, but it was initially called in as an explosion at the university library. We responded up there with the normal on-shift crew, and we augmented that with an additional 4 police officers to assist with that. And ironically, one of those police officers on his way up there, the library, it was called in as the library, and there's a bar on the hill that's, as you know, there's a bar on the hill that's called the library. And initially they thought it might have been there. And thankfully that PSO thought enough to stop at that location to make sure it wasn't there, and then could divert the firefighters and the other PSOs directly to the scene so that there was no time lost with that. It turned out to be a small incident, a medical emergency really, but it shows that we can put more people on scene. We can make that safer for both our citizens and for our firefighters by putting more people on scene and helping with those scenes management.
And we also had a few years back the Great Wall, maybe it wasn't a few years back, but the Great Wall fire. And I know, Craig, you were at that scene, and we got a graphic on there. Can you explain a little bit about what happened at that fire?
Well, there were several PSOs that assisted at the Great Wall Fire. And, one thing I recall that the view you see on TV is, it shows 22nd Street there on the south side of the Great Wall Restaurant. And the 2 hose lines that were being run on the south side of that building those are all PSOs on those hose lines. You can see 2 of them in the picture, but there's 2 more just to the left there. So we were a great assistance at that fire and provided a lot of manpower to help the fire department.
Yeah, and one thing we haven't mentioned is that the public safety officers typically arrive at the scene before the before the firefighters do. There's some great things they can do at that scene when they first get there. They can assess the scene, determine whether we have a fire, what size the fire is, so they can locate the hydrant, perhaps evacuate the building if necessary, evacuate neighboring buildings if it's necessary, locate people inside. We just talked briefly about that compressed air foam system, that fire extinguisher, large fire extinguisher in the back of the vehicle, which can be used as well to extinguish exterior fires or slow fires down. But John, can you explain briefly about the trailer fire that we had a few years back and how that first responding actually in training PSOs and how that CAF system helped with that?
Right, it was February night. It was cold, very cold, as February nights would be in Iowa. We responded, we got a call for a trailer fire. Initially, 2 police officers who were in training as public safety officers responded there, got there, and found that the area around the door was on fire. One of those public safety officers pulled the CAF system off, knocked down the fire around that door, and they started to investigate and found that there was 3 people inside of the trailer. They were able to locate where those people were, and when the firefighters got there, those firefighters were able to, with their air masks on, quickly get into that trailer and save some lives. They saved 3 people's lives that day. Later on, that battalion chief who was in charge of that incident said to me, those public safety officers spraying that CAF on there knocked down the fire and allowed the firefighters to get in there and save those lives. If they had not knocked down that fire, those people may have died.
Yeah, and they knew right where the individuals were in the trailer, so they were able to tell the firefighters immediately. There's 1 on this end and 2 on that end. So that was a great save, and we're sure glad for all of our public safety employees that helped in that scenario. I know we talked to the insurance service offices, John, a little bit about points and how the PSO program. Can you briefly talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Well, the ISO does studies on fire service throughout the country, and they give a rating that helps with your insurance. It talks about your insurance rating and all that type of stuff. We checked with some of the public safety officer or public safety programs throughout the country, and found that of the ones that have their ISO rating done here, there was a couple of them that actually had their rating either stay the same or get lowered as a result of the public safety officer program. We also talked to that ISO office and found that in addition to the normal rating that we may get with all of our trucks and our hydrants and all that type of stuff, the public safety officer actually adds points to our rating under that ISO rating. So those public safety officers may help our ISO rating as time goes by.
Yeah, that was a very interesting phone call we made to learn that we get points for having public safety officers. And those 2 cities that had their ISO ratings lowered, one was a population of 75,000 and the other was a population of 42,000. Yes. And we got less than a minute left, so I just want to touch on real briefly about the NFPA standard 1710. There's some standards out there that the Fire Protection Agency puts out, and we surveyed 18 cities, and you'll see that on the screen. We surveyed a lot of full-time fire departments, and those that responded were the 18 on the screen, and none of them adopted those 1710 standards. Many of them said it was too stringent, not needed, very expensive, and nearly impossible to meet. So I just thought it was interesting, noteworthy, and actually 10 of those cities are larger in population than Cedar Falls. So we got a great program going here in Cedar Falls with our public safety officers. I just kind of want to recap and say that, we had traditional models in the past where we had separate police and separate fire. We started doing some cross-training back in 2005, and we got to a point now where our public safety officers are cross-trained, are very competent in both fields. They, many of them, actually all of them operate a squad car, and then what they do is if they're needed in a fire scene, they go to a fire scene, they add the number of firefighters to the fire scene, which makes it a very safe scene, but it also helps the police department out too, because you can take a few of those fire guys from the station, have them work police, and then run to the fire scene when necessary. It's a great program. If anyone has any questions about that program, they can call either one of the three of us at City Hall. We'd be certainly willing to talk to you more about that. We just want to thank you for watching us on Currents Up Close, and have a good day.